Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for being with us today. This is an event run by Seismic. I've got a couple of colleagues on the chat, but I'd like to particularly bring your attention to Erin McKay from the Seismic team, who will help run this event with me today. I'm Danica Kong. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Seismic, and I'll be your moderator for the day. So I'll start off with Jennifer Finley, first panelist. Jennifer has a PhD in biology. She did a 3-year postdoc at UCSF, and then she moved into her first role at TCAN Genomics as a tech marketing specialist or scientist, sorry. And she's currently a scientific marketing manager at sorry, I forgot the Calidus.
Calidus, yes.
Calidus Groups, which is a marketing agency that specializes in science. So I'll let Jen maybe say 2 or 3 things about yourself that you think is relevant to kind of your career journey or yourself.
So yeah, a little bit about myself. I spent 15 years at the bench and decided to explore other opportunities and stuff. And I think we'll get more into that as we go along. But one of the things about me is I really love design and explaining science to other individuals who may or may not know what's going on. So, yeah.
So marketing was something you were quite interested in, and we'll get more into that as the panel goes along, but it sounds like those things really fit where you are and what you do today.
Yes.
Good. We'll move to Ned. Ned has a pre-med degree at Johns Hopkins, started his career as a technologist at Elan Pharma, working with the first Alzheimer's diagnostic test. He then moved from academia into cell signaling tech as a product manager, kicking off a career in product development, which includes, I think, Agilent, Nikon, and Seahorse, just to kind of name a few for Ned. And he's now director of project management, or is it product management or product management?
Yep.
Bioscience. And I'll let Ned say a few things about himself.
Yeah, so I have 10 years of bench experience. Spent a lot of years in Baltimore, both as an undergraduate and as a graduate, and sparked my scientific interest while in Baltimore, and have carried that pursuit throughout my commercial experience. I've been in over 15 years in corporate product management and strategic marketing roles, and just recently have moved to a startup company in San Francisco, and helping them structure their product marketing and commercial groups. So big change, new challenges, but have never really left the science.
Great, thank you, Ned. Thank you for joining us today. We'll move to our next panelist, Juan Patarroyo. He has a degree in microbiology and immunology, and moved into his role at UCSF Medical Center, and then into Pfizer 13 years later as a scientist. His strong track record in R&D across startups and big pharma, including Novartis, Vedanta, and he is now the Director of Science Operations and Strategy at Lab Central. So Juan, we are happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And maybe you want to say 2 or 3 things about yourself and your kind of career progression, just as an introduction. Yeah,
certainly. Thank you so much for the introduction. I am very happy to actually be here and share my story, with a lot of you guys. As you mentioned, I have been in the trajectory between academia, then into big pharma, small biotech, big pharma, and back into the small biotech. However, not necessarily in the bench or actually, doing experiments or working directly on projects per se in the R&D space and drug development. So I took on a different role in terms of like actually aiding companies and to get to that next level in regards of their science and basically help them with their workflow, but more on the operation and scientific side of things. So I didn't remove myself completely from the science in some ways, but definitely I am not pipetting anymore, or I am not actually like, going after the data and then actually presenting the data and going to the next milestones in some ways, which is a little bit of a different perspective of actually drug development. So
Good. Thank you for that. And last but not least, we have Tianli Chen, who has a master's in biotech from Johns Hopkins. He started his career as an intern at the NIH and then moved into Origin Tech as a marketing associate, and he's now the US Regional Marketing Manager at GenScript. Welcome, Tianli, and again, thank you for joining us. Maybe you say a couple of things that you want the audience to know as part of the introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me here. So as you mentioned, I did start as an intern in NIH and absolutely hated it, actually. I knew at that time I'm not fit as a bench scientist. So actually, I was hired by Origin as a marketing associate, so kind of explore my creative side and just absolutely fell in love with that. So I can continue to use science, all my science knowledge to kind of explore that. 2 years ago, I joined GenScript, and that kind of opened a whole new door to now understanding the gene and cell therapy field. And at GenScript, we're really here to kind of support that from research all the way to preclinical. So I'm happy to share more of my experience here today.
Thank you, Tianli. All right, so that's our list of panelists. We've got Jen, who's a scientific marketing manager. We've got Juan, who is now the director of science operations and strategy at Lab Central. We've got Ned, who is director of product management at Excel Biosciences, and then Tianli, who is the US regional marketing manager at GenScript. So various different roles within the kind of business scope, all starting out as scientists and having gone through it, gone into these roles in their unique ways, and that's what we're here to hear more about today. So welcome, everyone. The format of the event today, the panel session, is we've done the introductions. Now we'll go into a kind of 30 to 35 minute guided Q&A session where I have questions that I'll ask to foster some conversation around your career journeys. And a little bit more about what you do today, because I'm sure a lot of people in the audience, including myself, there are some things I'm not very clear about in terms of what it is like to be, what a day in the life of, the four of you might look like. And then the last kind of 20 minutes, we want to switch that over to some questions. So participants, audience, please do put your questions in the chat. Erin will curate them and kind of prioritize ones that are repeating. So we have a 15-20 minute session at the end of it where Erin will kind of come and take over and ask some of the questions that she's been curating and screening from the audience. Does that sound good? So without further ado, I will start the questions rolling. And I've kind of identified, one or two of you to answer each question from the panel. But if there's one of you who really feels like there's something you want to share, please just say, hey, I have something to add to that, and you're welcome to. So we'll keep it conversational, but just in the interest of time and making sure we hear from everybody, I tried to streamline it a little bit. Oh yeah, we should be good for anyone who feels like there's something you want to share to just say, hey, I would like to jump in. All right, so Jen, can you tell, what made you apply for the role at TCAN? If I understand it correctly, that was your first kind of step out into a non-bench role. What made you apply for that? What drew you away from the bench and into kind of an industry setting that was not a bench?
So I was actually in an interesting place at that time. I had started a program, or not started a program, but I joined a program called MINDS, Motivating Informed Decisions with UCSF. And it was for graduate students and postdocs. And during that process, you get to meet mentors and people in different aspects of the industry to learn about what they do, what makes them succeed, and what they really enjoy about their job and what they don't enjoy. You can just ask them questions. And during that process, I met one of my mentors, Priya Balachandran, and she really spoke to me and had a lot of great input and information. And she was working at Nugent at the time, and she invited me to come work there as an intern and learn more about the experiences as an intern in marketing for them and help with the redesign of their website and everything. And as I did that, it seemed like it was a really great fit, and they actually ended up offering me a position. So I didn't really apply for the position. I was just exploring my career and where I wanted to go.
Gotcha. And just a quick follow up to that. What is marketing in the science context? What are some of the things you do on a daily basis?
So especially with when I first started with Nugent, it encompasses a wide breadth of things, anything from inbound to outbound marketing, but essentially it's figuring out how, especially when you're working with life science companies that are marketing to scientists, figuring out how to communicate your product so that it actually speaks to the audience of interest.
Okay.
And you do that with multiple different formats, whether it be digital, conferences, events, webinars like this, or improving your website from all different aspects, whether it be from a SEO perspective, search engine optimization, to even just starting to do ads and other things like that. So it can be a wide breadth of different things. And depending on how large or small your marketing team is, you may have somebody who specializes in one little aspect of that, or somebody who oversees and manages all of it. So.
Okay, understood. Okay, thank you. And Juan, I thought your particular path was rather interesting because you had such a strong track record in R&D in very, in both big pharma, and then I think you had also a couple in some startups. What led to that decision of one day did you kind of just wake up and go, I want something completely different? Is this completely different? What was that thought process? How did you end up where you are today?
That's a very good question. So as you saw, I mean, I have been in R&D for like over 20 years, working in academia again and working in big pharma, startups, and so on. I think the actual decision to actually make a switch like that came in the last, I want to say, 3 to 4 years. I do really enjoy R&D. I do really enjoy the fact of generating data, the fact of asking questions and getting the answers. One step forward and 2 steps backwards, of course, when it comes to science. But for the most part, is really exhilarating to get to some of the things and generating new things and creating new assays, creating new questions that come up from what you get. So I thought more or less in terms of my career development, where else can I go from that point on? And I guess 3-4 years ago, that's where it hit me. Maybe I could do something else. Maybe I could actually start something different now in my life. My kids, for example, are already off to college, and I'm basically a little more free to think in some ways. So it made, that came up in terms of like, yeah, what else can I do? So some of the things that I was thinking about was project management, for example, within pharma, that there's a lot of things that you could actually do within there without having to actually do some of the work, but you're still involved in the science, you're still involved in looking at the data, you're still involved in all these things. And the other thing was operations, of course. Operations is a little removed from, at least in the big pharma, on what you do, because you're looking more at equipment and making sure that everything has PM and things like that. So Lab Central gave me that really good opportunity to marry both the operations side of things and the science kind of thing. So that's where I felt, this is where I want to be. And utilize my science background, utilize my R&D, drug development experience that I have with the new companies that are here at Lab Central. That for the most part, some of them come with one scientist or no scientist per se, and they start developing their own, workflows, and they develop their own, labs themselves and how to build it in some ways. So I would say 3 to 4 years ago, I basically reached down into myself and say, what else can I do, and what else do I want to do in my life in terms of my career development? And so that's what sparked.
And then kind of stemming from that 3 to 4 year period, as you were thinking of this, was it a matter of just finding the right opportunity, or did you have to somehow prepare yourself for this opportunity?
It does, yeah, it depends. So for me, it's finding the actual opportunity. At the same time, during that time, I was actually looking at taking classes, for example, for project management classes, right? I mean, that you could actually take and understand a little more how that process works, and even operations, right? I mean, try to understand a little bit more of how operations side of things work. That is, in a sense, is a different world than the actual thinking about science, thinking about data, and moving the project forward. So I did my own research in that sense.
Okay.
And I try to understand, what each of them entail in regards of whether which one I like the best in some ways.
Okay.
So yeah, I took classes and some online, things that you could read, online courses that you could read as well, YouTube videos, things like that, where you could actually gain a lot of information.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So Ned, what are you've been involved in like product development and management across multiple different platforms. I feel very diverse, diagnostic tests, medical devices, then antibodies, microscopes. So, the Seahorse, which is a device, I believe, and then molecular reagents at Agilent. What are some of the common responsibilities that, kind of sit across? So that is agnostic of platform, essentially, and is more specific to the role itself. And what is it that you do on a daily basis?
Let me start by answering the second part.
Okay.
So major responsibilities in a product management context are often misunderstood. There's a difference between product ownership and product marketing. And sometimes they tend to get lumped together as they did at Agilent, where it was a product marketing manager. And you were both the product owner as well as in charge of all of the marketing efforts like Jen was speaking to. Fundamentally, the skill sets that make you a successful product manager, at least in my instance, are about managing people, managing expectations, bridging realistic timelines with what the commercial goals are. Making other coworkers successful. And the part that I really liked about, because I was a scientist, I was trained as a stem cell engineer. I worked in a tissue engineering facility at Harvard. I went back to grad school, and I realized that my research deliverables were being eclipsed by things that were being brought onto the market by commercial entities and industry. And where I leveraged my own critical thinking and my scientific background was really around curiosity. How can I leverage my scientific skills to be useful in a commercial and industrial setting? And it's the curiosity that's my driver. And I leverage that curiosity to be a consummate learner, because when I was graduating, Johns Hopkins didn't have a lot of career assistants. They didn't have a lot of people that I could turn to say, how do I bridge this gap from a scientific training to an industrial commercial position, and just didn't really get the guidance there. And so my first job, I went in, my dad said, go into the CEO and ask how he became a CEO. And so I followed that advice, and the CEO said, the best way to learn how companies run is to become a product manager, because you'll get to meet everybody in the organization, all the different teams, you'll be interfacing with everybody and become this consummate orchestrator. And that is the reality. Understanding customer needs and being able to function in front of customers and being able to sell customers on your ideas is what I find to be attractive in product management. But there's a lot more to it. There's the planning aspect, there's the orchestration aspect, and there's the execution aspect.
Okay, so that encompasses product innovation as well.
That does encompass product innovation. And what I really find attractive to product marketing is one, being able to translate the scientific need into something that can become commercialized. And my specialty is now around commercialization. And two, living the experience of the customer, working with a customer and having that wow moment of this has never been possible before. I wasn't capable of generating this data. I wasn't capable of answering these scientific questions. And so the delivery of the tools, the solutions, and the applications are what keep me attracted to the product management role.
Okay, so was it difficult for you to work across these different, because these products are quite different, right? Like I said, you've got assay tests and assay diagnostic tests, and then you've got devices, and then you've got, antibodies. was it difficult for you to immerse in the across to immerse and own the product in these different platforms as you were moving?
There's no golden blueprint that can be applied to every corporate structure, process, and product. But there's a huge difference between product development and product management. And product managers work hand in hand with product developers. But the product developers ultimately are the ones that own the timeline. The product manager is the one that's designing the commercial timeline. And so you have to make sure that you distinguish those responsibilities. And you're constantly having to communicate how different those responsibilities are to upper management. But in the life sciences, there is kind of a successful formula that I've now understood and been a part of optimizing for the last 15 years, and was one of the reasons why I wanted to imprint that success on a startup looking to understand what success might be with the products that they have at Excel Bio.
Okay. So kind of take home from that is the product person really does work. You work with sales to kind of educate the sales team. You work with marketing to find out what people are saying, how they're reacting, also to give them the information they need to be able to communicate that. And then R&D obviously kind of falls probably within your department or team.
And so I'm on the complete opposite side of being a generator of information. I'm a harvester of information, and like Jen was alluding to, repackaging it so that we can answer the question from a customer's perspective of, so what? Why is that important to me? What value is that creating for my day-to-day work? And what challenges are you overcoming with your solution? And I love playing that wordsmith game to craft statements around converting value propositions into something that's very meaningful to customers and tangible to customers.
Yeah. It's not too different to writing a grant in a sense. You're looking for what they're most invested in and then finding a way to communicate your value.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Gotcha. Thanks, Ed. And Tian Li, so perhaps what does a regional marketing manager, what are your major responsibilities, and kind of what does a day in the life of Tian Li look like in that role?
Yeah, so currently I lead a team of 6 people working remotely. My entire team is actually all remote. I actually find that quite effective and efficient if you have a really good group of people that to work with. So as a US regional marketing manager here, I'm mainly in charge of campaigns, conferences and trade shows in the US, as well as content generation and social. So the vast amount of things being taken care of, different people on my team. We work extremely closely with product marketing managers. Ned actually just mentioned that sometimes in biotech, they life science field, they lump that together, marketing and product management. We're actually, I think, going through a reorganization as well to splitting that into marketing managers as well as product managers to make it more make people more specialized in certain things.
Okay. And have you always worked with services? So GenScript is all service based, right? And so was Origin. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yes. So 2 different business models. Yes. In here at GenScript, we have different business units. The one that I'm in, we are specialized in services. Previously at Origin is more catalog products where off the shelf they'll ship those next day. But here in my current role, we're mainly in charge of services.
Okay. And has there been anything about your scientific training, apart from kind of, you understand the service and the things that you're selling? Has there been anything about your scientific training that has really helped you, kind of run the marketing aspect of your role?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I've been doing marketing for the past 8-9 years. The one thing I understand in biotechnology is that scientists actually catch things on fairly slowly. So when I started at Origin, Facebook wasn't used. Actually, I was the one who convinced the upper management to start using Facebook to launch ads because they're just cheaper compared to Google Ads. After over a year and a half, I was able to grow to 15,000 followers. We're actually starting to see some conversions coming from Facebook. So that's types of things I really enjoy in marketing, is really trying new things. I talk to my friends, other colleagues from different fields, and trying to utilize some of the strategies that they use in the life science field. And what I found is that oftentimes it's very effective. Scientists, just like anybody else, just because the field itself is very slow to catch on in terms of technology or understanding, accepting certain things, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. So over the years, I have tried to implement different strategies and trying to use different things in terms of marketing, and it has paid off fairly well.
So the key transferable skill there is kind of willing to experiment in a sense, and as long as you have key metrics you're looking for that can define whether this was a successful experiment or a not, an experiment that wasn't successful, that's kind of that thinking is probably something that you brought.
Yeah, I think especially in marketing, right? A lot of times we don't know certain things will work unless we try it. So like I said, we try to implement different strategies. We're trying to tweak things a little bit. I can give you an example recently on LinkedIn. This might not be the same strategy for other companies, but we do post a lot of, funny sketches, funny memes, and those often get very high click rates and high reactions from people on LinkedIn. And so what we have been doing is we have been combining some of the memes with some of our services that we push. So what we did find is that we get higher click rates with those because they're getting more exposure. It runs through the algorithms on LinkedIn. So those are the strategies that I'm willing to take a risk on to kind of experiment. And if it does well, then I can continue to do those things.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks, Jenny. Now, Jen, what do you most like about how science is done in industry, and how does your role support that?
I mean, so I like getting excited about the science, especially with new startup clients, people who, are potentially in stealth mode, and, really just need to start getting their product noticed. The ability to really help the clients and promote cool science. Right now in my current position, I help multiple different clients, big, small, but working with each one of those and promote their cool science or their cool technology, which is able to directly aid the scientists in the lab. So getting the word out there, figuring out ways to connect with people so that they can actually have productive experience.
For someone who's kind of, let's say, knee deep in the R&D side, whether it's in their postdoc or their PhD or their master's or the bachelor's, or in an industry position, but kind of in the R&D space, looking to go into a role where, let's say it's marketing or even product development for that matter, is something that is not at the bench. Do you think that's an important, for you looking at candidates applying for roles within your team and department, is that something you are often curious about? How they are looking to support the thing that they were quite excited about in a different way?
For me, it's what is driving their interest, what do they actually like doing, and does that actually connect with what they would be doing day to day in a larger context?
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense. So yeah, if you could, if I was to because I think that's an important point for anyone looking to kind of move, and maybe Juan, you have some input because you've done this, not too long ago, but looking to move again from a situation where you're in R&D and looking to come out and do something quite different, where it isn't maybe apparent that you've been either exposed to it or trained in some way for it in the past, right? How did you best communicate your interest for the new role, for the non-bench role?
Yeah, I mean, my experience was obviously quite unique. I had always had a love for design. I'd been doing it since I was a research technician at the Stowers Institute. They offered me the wonderful opportunity to learn Adobe design programs like Photoshop and Illustrator. So I've been working with them for a very long time, even creating compelling posters for scientific conferences and stuff, so that people would actually want to look at my poster and talk to me about my science and learn more. And so for me, you know, communicating that to my peers and to my mentors kind of opened my eyes that maybe this might be a role worth pursuing for me. So that's where the Minds program kind of came in and helped me explore that more. I know not everyone would have that opportunity and fortunate situation. I saw in the questions that somebody was wanting to know, like, would an MBA be worthwhile? I think for some people it might be. I think talking to others who have had an MBA and how that helped them. I have a colleague who has been doing product management and sees that as a good way to continue to move forward in that role and succeed there. So I think it depends on what you want to do, and you know.
Okay, thanks. Juan, do you have any thoughts on, because I know you've done this not too long ago as well, kind of moving across?
Right. So I just started this position here at Lab Central, obviously about 4 months ago or so. So I'm sort of new to this whole operations thing. I would say one recommendation that I would give anyone is, as me being in the R&D industry for such a long time, you have to be ready to give it up in some ways, mentally and you know, and psychologically per se, because it's a different role that you definitely will play as an operations and as somebody that is basically involved in different aspects of the R&D side of things. So as for me, I'm trying to get still used to this position that I'm playing, because obviously my mind is still on the other side of the coin per se. But it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile to take, you know, a leap into something new, to develop your career, to develop your, even if 1-2 years down the line it may not work out. I mean, you could always have both, right? I mean, you could say in your CV or whatever that you've actually touched both sides of the world, and eventually you may go back to it. But I would say it's rewarding and challenging, obviously, because like you said, I have no training on operations, no training on project management or whatever it would be. But somebody taking the leap and the faith in you, and somebody believing in you that you could actually do it is something unique.
So you drew parallels of where that would be, where you had kind of done maybe individual components of what you would do today in the operation setting from your past roles, and kind of really highlighted, I have done these things in some level, and then I have a strong interest, and that kind of, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so I mean, in a way, I'm in a unique position because Lab Central, I mean, maybe not everyone is familiar with what Lab Central is. Lab Central is an incubator or a launch pad. Basically, we call ourselves a launch pad instead of an incubator. Is basically houses over 70 companies. For the most part, they're all startup companies that are raised less than $7.5 million, for example. So sometimes it's just one bench, one scientist. So there's basically bare bone companies that are just, you know, getting a start in whatever IP that they drew from academia or from somewhere else, and they just want to expand on it. So those are the kind of companies that I get to work with directly. So technically, I'm not doing the experiments, but I'm talking with them about workflows, about how to develop those those assays in some ways that they could actually get them to the next level, because obviously what they want to get to is to raise the next round of funds so that they can continue their research. So it requires obviously to generate data, to generate excitement around what they're doing. So I'm basically guiding them in terms of like what tools do they need and what actually could they, equipment wise, or like I said, or assays and things like that, that I could actually help them in regards of generating this data that is going to take them to the next level, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. And Timmy, I see you've plugged something into the chat, which is a leadership program. You want to take a second and yeah, just tell everyone what that is.
Yeah, I see other people's questions down there. Just figure that this would be really helpful. I think at GenScript, we're helping some of the bench scientists to kind of transition. So it's more of a rotational program where you're in different departments, you kind of get a feel of what it's like, and then at the end of that training program, you kind of determine which department you want to be in. So at least on my team, I actually recently accepted somebody from this program. He was really great in my department. After the end of the rotation period, I was able to talk to HR and kind of retain him on my team.
Okay. And actually on that note, Cindy, I do have I like this question a lot. I think it's a fun question, but what is the biggest misconception about your role? So what was something that you potentially didn't, thought the opposite of, and then came into your role and realized, oh, it was actually the opposite? I know for one, it's sometimes very challenging for us to work with job seekers with a role in a CRO. So like GenScript or Origin, oftentimes people have this misconception that if you're going to work at a CRO, you're going to have a very mundane day-to-day existence. And that's really not the case, especially now. And so what's an example of something like that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, the goal here at GenScript is to support all scientists, right? We're here to provide the tools for drug discovery and for researchers for their projects. So yeah, I think that a lot of misconception, like even for me when I first joined, it's extremely different from my role back at Origin. At Origin, it was a much smaller company. I was doing a lot of things actually, from doing SEO, SEM, running campaigns, social, and everything. But here, after coming to GenScript, the role is much more defined. It's a larger company. It's I'm working with, instead of working with 5 to 6 people, I'm working with 50 to 100. Everyone have their own more defined roles. So I think it's just really learning to kind of accept that and learning as you go. It took me a while. It took me 2 months to kind of make that transition. But yeah, that's finally kind of settle in that role. But really it's just adaptability. Right. I think all companies, it's a little bit different, so when you go from company to company, you got to learn the ins and outs and how to communicate with other people. Just keep an open mind, I ultimately.
Okay, thank you. And Ned, you went the other way, right? You went bigger establishments to now a startup.
Yeah, what was the question?
The question was basically, was there any misconception? What is the biggest misconception about your role, where you thought it was more about this, and you came in and you found something surprising?
Yeah, I mean, my days are full of surprises. We're a group of 28 people. Half of our team is under 25 on the engineering and scientific side. And I don't know if there was like one thing that really stands out. To me, being an effective product manager and an effective product marketing manager revolves around the ability to communicate your ideas clearly and effectively, and with conviction, and the discipline to stand behind and justify what your decision space looks like. I guess the biggest misconception is the same it kind of harkens back to 20 years ago when I was like, what is product management? And it's so true, there's no task that's too small for a product manager to accomplish. And you have to be comfortable, putting a strategy. Well, what does strategy mean? Strategy is just an effective way of communicating a plan that makes sense and operating at that really high altitude level, all the way to, mining information and designing content and executing on plans and motivating people and sharing the vision, and bringing people along for the ride. But I think sorry to get distracted there, but I think the misconception is around how granular some of the actual tactical and executables are when it comes to a single deliverable. And I think I don't think many people know how to navigate that space. And there's a pretty big disconnect with that particular expectation.
Okay. So meaning it's a lot more exploratory in a sense. The idea is to kind of get to a goal, and it's not as structured in how you can get there. Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean, it's if you come up with the idea, you're doing everything from the designing the plans, communicating the vision, to all of the executables, and being able to drill all the way down into that tactical level, that very granular level, is something you can only learn on the job to be an effective product manager. Getting back to that MBA question, yes, there's no doubt MBA will get you in the door for higher level product management positions, but if you've been in the industry for 5 to 10 years as a product manager, you're basically learning the same skill sets that you would have derived from an MBA to learn how to thrive and survive across startup to big corporate. And
you make money in the process as opposed to spend money. The MBA versus working in the gaining that experience. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll end on the last question before I hand it over to Erin to kind of have to ask her questions from the audience. But this is for all of you. What would be your advice to either a scientist or an engineer who's looking to pursue a role like yours? And we'll start maybe from Jen, then go to Juan, then go to Chen-Li, and then go to Ned.
So, sorry, can you phrase that again?
Sorry, repeat the question. The question is, what would your advice be to a scientist or engineer who's looking to pursue a role like yours?
I mean, my biggest suggestion is to talk to people who are in that role. Like I said earlier, knowing what is your day-to-day like? Is that something you're going to enjoy on a day-to-day basis? I know when I was exploring, leaving the academic bench side of things, there are definitely certain parts I miss. I miss collecting data. That was one of my favorite aspects. I don't miss writing large grants as much. I don't miss the idea of running my own lab and having all the administrative duties that need to fall in line with that. That said, on the marketing side of things, there are always things that, can be challenging, and being aware of those challenges and whether you're okay with addressing those. For example, meeting an ROI, and also knowing, like, is it the appropriate ROI for that event, that campaign, that whatever.
So you have to have some kind of exposure to that to understand some of those things, and that comes from meeting people and kind of networking through.
Yeah, it does. And just being an open mind, like if you are going into career exploration, I definitely had to do a lot of learning on the job and using my own intuition about what works and doesn't work. A great example is, a digital ad where Tianli was explaining that he was getting a great click-through rate. A great click-through rate is one great aspect, but the execs may want to know, well, what's my revenue that I'm getting from that? And you may not get direct revenue from a great click-through rate. It takes more nurturing and more touch points than just that. So being
Yeah.
able to convey those information and understand that information is really important and key.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Juan?
Yeah, I mean, I think I echo what Jen is saying. I mean, mentorship. If you have the opportunity to be a mentor, a mentee, and
Mhm.
find somebody that is basically doing what you're interested in, and spend some time with them, asking them questions. I mean, I know that not everyone has that access to those, but research on online. I mean, I think that there's a lot of information there that you could actually gain from in regards of what you want to do. But if you do have the chance to find a mentor, I think is very valuable. And at the end of the day, is convincing yourself, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to, take a leap of faith and see what happens. Is a career development regardless of anything. I feel that you could always go back to what you were doing before if it doesn't really work out. So it's a win-win, I gotta say. But challenging yourself and making yourself uncomfortable and learning something new is something that definitely has a huge impact in your life.
Mhm. Okay. So de-risking also by, again, finding out, meeting people, finding out more information kind of before, and then challenging yourself to say, is this what you want to do? And then recognizing this is going to be challenging. Are you up for the challenge? Okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Chen Li and then Ned.
So, my advice really is you have to understand having a scientific background and a degree is actually extremely hard compared to, some of the other skill set that you learn as you're in the industry. I actually think marketing is actually fairly easy compared to, the scientific degree that we all obtained. So just keep that in mind. It's when you step into the industry, and also really just keep an open mind. You're not gonna get the very high level job initially, but if there's an opportunity open, please do accept that. That will open your other doors for other opportunities, right? You just have to get into the door first. And as you're learning more about the role, I'm sure there are other opportunities that open within that company. So, initially I didn't have any marketing background, but I accepted a role as a marketing associate at Origin, which, eventually led to where I am today.
Okay, gotcha. Take the opportunity as it comes to you. Ned?
That's great advice. I think I share that with the folks that I mentor through the mentor program that I am involved with through Johns Hopkins. I would also challenge everybody to just write up a justification as if you were presenting it to a manager on why you want to achieve an online product management or a product strategy certificate course, and double check your conviction level there. What is it that interests you if you were to achieve that? Because yes, it'll open doors, but it is very hard to find the right opportunity. Product management is one of the hottest areas of bridging the scientific and commercial gaps in many of the industrial groups that I work with, across startups to big corporate. It's an awesome career. I've been senior, I've been junior, I've been director, I've been managing other people and an individual contributor. There was a lot of questions, so I'll just address it because it does speak to this question. How did I get into product management? I found a role out of my passion, which was stem cells, that I could continue to use my science and learn the science, but it was half the time on the bench and half the time selling, pricing, marketing, and dealing with customer service on the products that I was making. And so it was just a unique position and kind of lucky in that sense. And that was my first experience with becoming a product manager, because like I said, it really didn't have it wasn't a very well-defined set of responsibilities when I entered the workforce. And I'll get back to what the other panelists said, which is, half the job description is just going to be wrong. and you're going to end up developing that on your own. I know that
Yeah.
applies across a lot of job responsibilities, but in particular product management, that might be 25% accurate. The other is going to be what you make of it. And as long as you can be a champion and you feel like you have leadership qualities, I think product management is worth exploring.
Awesome. No, that was a great. I really appreciated those answers. I think they hopefully are helpful to some of the job seekers out there. But I don't want to delay. I'm going to pass it to Erin, who's going to address some of the questions from the audience at this point. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you everyone for sharing your insight. I've been collecting questions from the audience. I've got a couple that I think I can combine. For Jen and Tian Li, how open are companies to giving you a chance in a field that's not your direct scientific expertise? So say you're taking on a non-bench role, you're not really required to be doing the research, but do you need to have expertise in the background that the company's specifically working in to be a strong candidate?
I think that really depends on the company that you're at. The smaller the company, the more challenging that may be for them to support that. But I know, so Nugen was acquired by TCAN, and TCAN did offer those opportunities through either coursework or other growth development, career growth development, so that you can expand on your current role or learn about new roles within the company and stuff. So they do offer, larger companies will offer that type of place. So even if you can get in a startup, maybe more scientific at the bench, you can still go and explore other opportunities within that larger company.
Thank you. Tian Li, do you have a different opinion?
No, I just actually share the leadership program. I think here at Jansker, we're very open to that. They're open to kind of want to train scientists who wants to transition from a bench role into industry. Just kind of add on to that. So, I completed my master's at Johns Hopkins while I was working at Origin. But, during my master program, I also took, other courses. It wasn't just scientific courses. I was taking, marketing or sales, right? Kind of getting an idea. So you can definitely select other courses to kind of help you, right? So when you do apply for the job, you say, hey, I did take courses on marketing or sales or whatever it is. So that will help you when you do decide to make that transition.
Thank you. And one other I've combined, Ned and Juan, do you want to take this one? So for someone without industry experience who's interviewing, are there transferable skills that you should highlight? What's the best way to go about standing out as a candidate when you don't have the industry experience, but you're really passionate about the role?
I mean, I could start just by saying, yes, that's usually what you get, from somebody, that is actually trying to, get candidates, is that you need experience. You need experience with this, you need experience with that. But how can you get the experience if you're never given the opportunity to get the experience? I would say in this day and age and in this job market, volunteering and doing internships is one of the best ways to gain experience. At least that is an area where that you have worked and that you have some experience with, even though it's not a real job, but there's something that you could actually put on your CV, on your resume as a track record that you could actually have worked in that area. And courses like Tan Li was saying, you could also take classes and courses in marketing or in some of these other areas that could also give you that that visibility.
Yeah, show that you have the interest and you have the evidence to show that it's an interest to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think Tian, I totally echo that approach. And Tian Li, had mentioned accepting junior level positions to get in the door, and then you can strut your stuff and get promoted, right? There's definitely a track record of organic promotions in a product management or marketing. And so there's layers and levels to advance for sure. It's a really hard question to answer. I mean, I write job descriptions for people that I've had to hire at Agilent. I did the same at Nikon. And it was really hard to find the right candidate based on the kind of the words that you associated with the responsibilities. But there's always an underlying reason. And if you can uncover why they're needing that assistance, it's likely that you can make analogies to the work that you've done in a research setting, where you've managed a project or you've managed a research endeavor, you've had deliverables and timelines. So I think it's just through association that you can share those experiences that will help you create that narrative, given that you don't have direct experience in product marketing, because it's rare that candidates at junior level, at least those that we've hired, that do.
You know, a lot of times also you have to understand, as a manager, you want someone to be committed, to work hard, to be able to learn on the job, right? No one is going to come in and know everything, but you know, I'd rather have someone who's willing to commit to the job, to work hard, come in with an open mind, to want to learn, and someone who has extensive amount of experience, but don't really want to do anything. So, you know, just keep an open mind when you apply for these jobs. Sometimes your character, who you are, also makes a huge difference in applying for a job.
Yes, thank you so much. Say thank you to the panelists for taking time out of their day to share their insight and their advice. And thank you all the participants for attending. So yeah, I see a lot of thank you for the panelists. Everyone have a wonderful day.